Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this Surpass webinar. Today we're going to be exploring the benefits of Scrum within the Surpass community, but in the wider assessment community as well. My name's Tim Burnett, I'm from BTL, looking after the marketing side of it here, and I'm joined today by Scrum Masters Kirk Stevens and Lauren Wilkinson. Sorry. Okay, so without further ado, let's crack on. If at any point you want to ask questions, and there's a form at the side, please do feel free to drop them in, and we'll try and answer them as we go through. So, what is Scrum?
Scrum is a process framework that has been used to manage complex product development since the early 1990s. It's lightweight, simple to understand, but difficult to master. It's based on empiricism, and the 3 pillars of empiricism are transparency, inspection, and adaptation.
Okay. So it sounds like quite a kind of, it sounds complicated in that sense, doesn't it? But it's quite a simple thing to kind of work through, is it?
Yeah, we have roles, artifacts, and events that are quite explicit from the Scrum guide. Right. So it's all dictated out to us.
Very simple and lightweight.
Yeah.
So how does it fit in with Agile? Because we often hear Agile and Scrum used together in the kind of same sentence, rightly or wrongly. How do the two map?
So the way to think about it is that Agile is the umbrella, and underneath it we have different frameworks that we can follow, and at BTL we choose to follow Scrum.
There are others such as Kanban, XP, but specifically here we use
Scrum is the main one that we do. Okay. So this just shows us a bit of an overview of the kind of Scrum process. We're going to look at this in a little bit more detail, aren't we? Mm-hmm. But just for the audience just at this point, do you want to just kind of talk through that overview of what is Scrum in this sense? Laura, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so it's basically Scrum in a picture. So we have different events which are inspection loops, so we've constantly got that inspection and ability to adapt. So depending on how long your sprint is, potentially 2 to 4 weeks, we have 2-week sprints here at BTL, and every 24 hours we have another feedback loop, which is the daily Scrum meeting.
Okay.
The idea being that at the end of that 2 weeks we'll have that potentially releasable, shippable product increment.
Okay, and people talk about waterfall quite often in a kind of development concept. Yeah. How does this, just briefly, how does this kind of compare in that kind of process? How do the two fit together?
I think waterfall projects are a lot longer,
right.
And I think one of the key points to Scrum is that you're releasing something a lot earlier to what you would do in a waterfall project. And the reason for that is to be able to deliver something of value to the customer, to be able to get their feedback. From a waterfall point of view, you could be waiting 6 months, 8 months, beyond a year to actually get something that you'd wanted. At which point you'd have invested quite a lot of money into producing something that might not have been quite right. And that's one of the big positives of why we use Scrum, so we can get that feedback earlier on. Okay,
so actually giving someone something to play with, to use, to interact, rather than seeing, I suppose, in waterfall there would have been the process of a document, very heavy documentation.
Yes.
And using that as a paper-based exercise for exploring what it is you want to do.
Yes.
Whereas with Scrum, you get something tangible to look at, to say, yes, that's what I was looking for, or no, that's something I was kind of I wasn't wildly away from where I wanted to be, was I?
So like the Agile Manifesto said earlier, with things we value on the left over those on the right, it's all about individuals and interactions over comprehensive documentation, and getting working software out there to the client as quickly as possible. Okay,
so is there still documentation involved in the Scrum process? Yeah, I assume there must be some auditable trail or something.
Yes, there is. It depends on your life cycle management tool that you use, but we have technical wikis that the developers will fill. And we have a lot of supporting teams within BTL. We actually have a documentation team who produce all the documentation that goes out with each release.
And we currently produce help files within our products, to be able to guide users and how to use a feature and that kind of thing. So we do produce that type of documentation, but a lot less, more streamlined to how waterfall projects will produce similar documentation.
Okay, so don't forget, if you've got any questions as we go through this, feel free to throw them in. So, Scrum, there's obviously a team involved. Who's involved in that team? How's that work?
So there are 3 roles in Scrum. We have the product owner, the Scrum Master and the development team. The Scrum Master is depicted quite nicely here in the centre because we're here to support the product owners as well as the development team, and we resolve impediments that the team have, and we also help the product owners develop product backlog items into smaller chunks of work for the team.
So you, as kind of Scrum Masters, you're kind of facilitators in this kind of communication stream. Is communication quite a strong part of the kind of Scrum process, is it?
Massively, yeah. I mean, I think it's key to realise that obviously when a piece of work comes in, it's how that's delivered to the Scrum team. So obviously we'll have refinements and other Scrum ceremonies that will come to, but you know, it's when the product owner and development team work together to get a good understanding of what work they need to produce, and the Scrum Master, you know, facilitates those meetings, ensure that the development team are clear, and you know, and support the product owner to be able to best advise on what needs to be done. Okay,
so let's have a look at some of these teams. So who's this happy, smiley bunch here then? Who are these guys?
So this is our lovely group of product owners. It's just some of them. We've got more teams, more product owners for each team. So they're the sole person that is responsible for managing the product backlog. They're responsible for prioritising it to the highest value for the customer and the business. They ensure that the development team understands the product backlog items, which are often referred to as PBIs. They're the only person that can accept or reject the work as well, and they remain accountable for the work produced by the development team.
Okay.
So we have teams on 3 continents for BTL, and what we do to manage that is we have our POs all based at Shipley in our head office.
Okay, so it's here in the UK,
yes,
based, and they're working kind of as part of that kind of core team alongside other team members as well, so solutions architects, etc., kind of wider teams in there as well. You talk about single, I think the phrase single ringable neck is kind of brought up, isn't it, for the product owners? It can't be that much too difficult there, because they're all smiling, aren't they?
we've got a good group.
Yes, it is a good team. Yeah, I know a few of them. So, who's this bunch then?
So this is one of my development teams. This is Kronos. Kirk and I both are responsible for 2 Scrum teams each internally and 1 Kanban team. The teams are all named after different planets, so depending on what fiction that you're into, you might recognise some of our own team names.
I think Kronos, apparently that's Star Trek, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there a lot of that going on?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about the developments, doesn't it? But okay, so where, in terms of the team, how's it made up? What's the kind of part?
So the team are self-organising, so nobody can tell the team how they can turn one of their product backlog items that the product owner has created into a piece of work. They're cross-functional, so we've got all the skills within the team to be able to produce that piece of work. So in this group photo here, we have people that are predominantly Flash developers, .NET developers, but they will take turns in learning the code base and taking up different pieces of work. And we have a tester. However, in Scrum, the only job title that we recognise in that sense is a development team member.
Okay.
So they're all responsible for the output of the sprint, and there's no hierarchy. Although they might have specialised skills, everybody is equal within a team.
Okay, so it's teamwork. If the team works, it's the team's benefit. If there's an issue, then I assume it's something for the whole team to.
Indeed.
Yes.
And how does that kind of play out? In terms of the personalities of the team, does that work? Does that happen?
I think it's part of the Scrum Master role to ensure that they resolve any conflicts, because they will have conflicts.
Yeah.
People are passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
Some people are very opinionated. So at times they will have differences of opinions, and this is part of the Scrum Master role to come in and facilitate those kind of say confrontations, but discussions, and ensure that it benefits the team as a whole, because it is like you've mentioned, it's a team game, and that's why the team are made up of individuals with different skill sets, but they are as a team responsible for the work they're provided, which is one of the reasons I personally believe why that works so well in comparison to waterfall, where it seemed to be passed down a line.
They always had that over the wall.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Scrum Master. So obviously that's you guys. Is there anything else you want to kind of say about it? We've talked about it quite a lot in a way, but is there anything else you want to kind of add in that kind of?
Well, actually, there's 7 of us in total, and the difference with the product owner to the Scrum Master is we're actually co-located with our teams,
right?
Because we are responsible for ensuring that Scrum is understood and enacted. We're a servant leader, which is a term that sometimes people struggle to understand, in that we are here to serve the team. If they have any issues that will stop them being able to produce their work, it is our job to resolve that issue and remove that impediment. But we also lead in the sense that we enact the Scrum values and ensure that they're following the correct process.
Okay. Servant leader.
Yes.
Sounds kind of Lord of the Rings-esque, doesn't it? But yeah. So you're there to basically obey the development team in a way, aren't you?
Yeah, and show them the way as well from our knowledge that we've gained for our skill set, which is Scrum. So yeah, and I like to see sometimes. Well, I feel that sometimes that you need to coach the guys in the Scrum values, and essentially you eventually going to put yourself out of a job because the team should learn from you and act and deliver the Scrum values, and you'll be no longer needed. So.
Okay, so there'll be everyone looking out for situations vacant. Lots of Scrum Masters on the jobs at the job centre. So how does it all happen? Do you want to talk us through a kind of process a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So as I think we've mentioned before, that clients will work with a product owner, solutions architects, technical architect, to produce a feature that we add onto our product backlog.
Okay.
That will be then represented to the teams. The teams will break that feature down into sizable chunks that they will then be able to bring into a 2-week period, as we do at BTL, which we call a sprint. That then moves into the sprint backlog, which is an agreement made by the team. That's guided by the product owner as in priority, and then the teams will then work through the 2 weeks, and then they'll have the daily scrums every day, obviously, to discuss the progress, any problems, any blockers, and then by the end of the 2 weeks, they'll have an increment of the products.
Okay. So when we say increment of the product, that's a feature, that's something added into the service, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So increment is your kind of terminology. Other people might, looking at it as kind of, well, that button's now pink, or that now does that calculation. Yeah. So let's look at the sprint in a little bit more detail. And then I think we've got an example. We've got a question from Brenda about an example of it, and we'll come on to that in a second. We've got a good one in terms of the diagram creator that we worked on. But let's just go through. So the sprint itself, just describe the sprint itself for me.
So during the sprint there are 4 key events. The sprint would be classed as the 5th one. Events are just a Scrum term for meetings, basically. So sprints can progress in a series of 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. The maximum time frame or time box is 1 month. At BTL we choose 2 weeks. So during the sprint, no changes can be made that can jeopardise the sprint goal, and that is something that is decided in sprint planning, which we'll come on to in a moment. Scope may be clarified and renegotiated because we use Scrum in a complex environment, and that is to say when we don't know everything up front. So complexity may emerge and the team learn. So again, it's that whole empirical process. The only person that can actually cancel a sprint is a PO.
Okay.
And that is if the sprint goal itself becomes obsolete.
Okay, does that happen on a regular basis? Is that
very, very rarely?
I think once in our experience.
Yeah, like 3 years once.
Yeah.
So it's very rare that it does happen.
And it was just due to a customer's change in priority. So something got dropped in place as something else, and it just had to be done.
See, I remember the good old days when we would work on something, we were working towards a release, maybe an annual release of the product, and with Scrum we're doing more releases on a regular basis. But in the good old days, you'd be, well, I'd say good old days, the bad old days actually, you'd be working towards that kind of feature, and in some cases we'd release a feature which not only is obsolete, but it was obsolete 10 minutes after it was asked for, wasn't it? Which can be frustrating for everyone.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why they have the time scales. So we chose, BTL chose two weeks. Some companies can do 4, but it's based on you know, the cycle of getting feedback to the customers early, as well as the sort of the technology that you use. Some companies may need thaw because it's, you know, bigger technology base, or, you know, the product's bigger, all that kind of thing, and they won't see any value after 2 weeks, so that's why they use thaw. But at BTL, you know, we can turn things around reasonable in a 2-week sprint. That's why we chose that.
Okay, so sprint planning, that's quite a key part of the thing. Do you want to just talk me through the sprint planning process?
Yeah, sure. So sprint planning is day 1 of the sprint. It's time boxed to a maximum of 8 hours for a 1-month sprint, usually shorter for less. 2 topics are discussed: what is going to be done within the sprint and how we're going to do it. So it's a plan of work to be undertaken by the sprint team, and it's done collaboratively. And at that point we agree on a sprint goal.
Okay. And that's the sprint goal, is what you're working towards, is about that's
the main focus of the team.
Okay. Daily Scrum.
So this is
so everyone huddles around, starts passing the ball around. Is that the case?
Yeah, almost. we have screens for each team. We all stand up together, and no matter the length of the sprint, it's always going to be a 15-minute. It's always at the same time, the same place, to remove complexity. There's 3 questions, which is: what did I do yesterday to work towards a sprint goal? What am I going to do today to achieve the sprint goal? And do I have anything in my way, or does anybody in the team have anything in their way? And it's an opportunity to make commitments as team members to your other team members, and its aim is to reduce the need for other meetings throughout the day. That isn't to say you can't talk to one another, but most people, we have them first thing in the morning when the team are in, and that's their plan of work for the day.
So you just, with Scrum, is it quite meeting-like then, in a way, apart from obviously the daily stand-ups, but people can actually get on with stuff?
Absolutely.
We all recognise the importance of meetings when you've got actions that come out of it, but it kind of reduces down that administration in a way, does it?
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. It's also useful for other departments to use the daily Scrum as well. They sometimes see benefits in it.
It's not just the development really, is it? Yeah. I think we do it as part of the marketing team. We have a kind of daily. It's probably every second day really, where we just get together. So it does form a quite important part of it. So sprint review, talk me through this.
So sprint review happens at the end of the sprint. Again, it's time boxed to 1 month of 4 hours, usually less for shorter. We basically use that time to inspect the work that has been produced by the team. So the Scrum team and the stakeholders are all in a room together. We can do a demo live of the work that's been produced. Depending on what it is, we may have pre-recorded videos to play and discuss. So this is an opportunity to look at what the team have output and say whether anything needs to change for the next sprint, and the PO can make a decision whether they are accepting or rejecting it. So we collaborate on what will happen in the next sprint to optimise value. So it's the Scrum team, key stakeholders, and the PO will invite any of them to it.
Okay, now you mentioned video there.
Yeah.
So that's videos of the features that have been done, working, completed. What are the technologies kind of involved in those? Because when you work through the development suite, there's lots of screens around. What's happening there? What's going on in there?
So in terms of,
well, you've got displays with charts and green things, red things.
I think we visualise the sprint for external teams working on the work, know where they are, so they don't need to review it, but other people can make it visible. So a product owner could walk past, or anyone from the organisation could walk past and get a feel of where how the team are progressing. We also have graphs for our automation tests, and when teams develop a feature, sometimes on a nightly basis, sometimes once a week, they will run our automation tests and ensure that the code that they're developing it hasn't broken anything else, and keep a good eye on quality.
Okay. So sprint retrospective.
So this is one of them big inspection meetings in order to adapt and improve. It's all about improving and learning in Scrum. 3 hours for 1 month. It usually takes around an hour and a half. And it's an opportunity for the Scrum team to actually inspect itself. So we look at the positives, as in what went well, what didn't go so well, but the most important part of that is how do we improve what didn't go so well and take actions forward into the next sprint.
I think from Scrum Masters, it's the most valuable.
Most valuable.
Right, okay.
You know, the teams, obviously sometimes they need teams, certainly the new teams need coaching into that sort of honesty, approach. But yeah, that's where the improvements really take place, and you can see over a period of time that the teams are really grasping the processes and changing the processes to become more efficient in what they deliver and the quality in what they deliver.
So do you think the teams learn a lot quicker about their lessons?
Yeah.
Yes.
When I was a project manager, you'd have a big lessons learned report at the end, and obviously you'd have periodic points, but that would be the time when you would pull it apart, which in a way, after a year-long project.
Exactly, but we do it every 2 weeks,
yeah,
without fail. We would never cancel a sprint retrospective.
So it's a key, important part of the process.
Definitely.
For the team's learning, yeah.
So we talked about those kind of events. So what about the outputs? What are the outputs in this kind of process?
So there are artifacts, which is a Scrum term for documentation. So we've got the product backlog, which is a list of all the items that we need to get into the product. The sprint backlog, that's the items from the product backlog that the team have agreed to produce within their 2-week sprint, and the increment itself, so the potentially releasable product increment.
Okay, you say potentially releasable.
Yes.
We're going to talk about quality in a bit, but if it's not ready, does it get shipped?
No.
No, that's kind of a fundamental thing, isn't
yes,
it? Yeah.
And sometimes due to customer requirements, features, if they're familiar with our product, features span a lot of the product, so features can't be always developed in a sprint, so therefore we won't be able to deliver that. So features can actually span multiple sprints. So we can decide once a feature is complete, which might be 3 sprints work, 2, 1. That would be then shippable in terms of that feature.
Okay. So we've got a question there. So just before we're going to have a look at an example in a second, but just before we go to that, we've got a question from Emily, which is, what is the difference between the sprint review and retrospective? It appears that the review is about what the team is working on, and the retrospective is about how the team works.
That's fundamentally it, isn't it? Yeah, so the review is with the stakeholders to look at the actual work they've produced within the 2 weeks, and the retrospectives sort of more personal and a little bit deeper into the
processes and how they work, and from a development thing, we should have applied more unit tests, from a development thing, the test coverage, was limiting for a gap of knowledge, so it's building up, knowledge base from individuals and techniques. So yeah, the retrospective is how the teams work, while the review is what work they've actually done.
So just to be clear then, who would be in the retrospective?
To be honest, I think it can be a Scrum Master and team preference. Yeah. There would be nothing wrong with inviting the stakeholders. We have the teams and the Scrum Master, so there'll be Scrum Master, Product Owner, the designer and the development team in hours of BTL, but to ensure transparency, we document the notes and we share that with the wider business. So actually in the meeting, it's the Scrum team. Okay, and in the retrospective, in the review, who would be there? So it'd be all stakeholders. You could invite the end user. Customer, and when you say end users, that could be candidates or something. Whoever the PO deems should be there. Okay.
So the purpose is to get that feedback, so anyone using what we've developed would be, valuable feedback. So it's open book really. Yeah,
and if stakeholders, because of time differences, can't attend, we can video and share it with them that way instead. Okay.
So you're using all these technologies to connect these people, these processes up, really, aren't you? Record them, capture them.
It's all a global business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about global because we mentioned about the fact that in terms of the way development teams are structured, we have 4 teams here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then have we got some overseeing teams?
Yes, we have, and we've also got customer sponsored teams.
Okay.
So the customers we've got 2 in particular, and they can decide what features they want and work on them themselves collaboratively with our internal teams.
In essence, those customers who own those teams have their own product backlog, so they can work with the teams and the product owner to prioritise their own individual product backlog.
And are they developing in a completely different code stream, or are they working on
exactly
the same?
All working.
So they're all part of working the same code.
To one common goal.
Okay, and the product owners are working with them to make sure that quality, etc., is maintained as part of that process.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's just have a look at this example here. We've got a diagram created here. This was a question type that was created, a question tool, wasn't it, that was created for customers. So the idea being that you could add and elaborate on your questions with diagrams, flow diagrams, charts, other information that would effectively get across that. Well, they always say a picture tells 1,000 words, doesn't it? So just talk us through this. Is a user story here. Do you just describe what a user story is?
Yes, so as we keep saying that we break down customer requirements into product backlog items. The product backlog item is a user story. So we have the as a with the role, so the user or the candidate here. I want, so the functionality, which is the diagram creator component created. The so that is the benefit, so I can create diagrams to accompany my response, so you can elaborate on your question. We then have acceptance criteria, which are basically a tick list that the developers have to achieve in order to say that this user story is completed. And we'll find technical notes, so when we do our refinement sessions where we look at the user stories, see if we can break them down, we task them out, we add estimates in terms of time and complexity points, we add all these things in. Probably a key point to say is that the diagram creator, this is just one user story. We actually had 21 user stories on that feature that the teams worked on, and we also worked with our overseas team members, and we had stand-ups via Skype every single day. All of our events still took place, and everybody just joined via Skype. Okay,
so it's like the team are all there in the same room, but and they're all working on the same product. And 21 user stories as part of that process. Okay, is that a lot? Is that normal?
It was quite a big piece of work. I think it was 3 sprints worth of work, so that's almost one release for us at the moment. So it was quite a big piece of work, and as you can see, I think we've got a demo of it coming up. You can see it's...
So this is a wireframe, isn't it?
So the wireframes are created by our design team, put into the user story, and it allows the developers to see it before they task out, to get an idea of the tasks that they'll need to complete in order to produce the piece of software.
Okay, so it's quite a visual thing. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking from the feature point of view, and the reason why we break them down into user stories is because obviously the diagram creator, probably not what the diagram creator fits into many different areas of our product. So breaking the development into those sort of areas allows us to be able to deliver something where a customer can see it work. You can't schedule exams with it yet, but you can see it in test creation first, and you can get that feedback cycle started and build upon that, and then start adding the functionality to different areas of Surpass.
So you don't have to wait until the whole thing's done and potentially not even right for you. You can start.
And we provided the customer with a demo as soon as we had a working prototype as well on this.
So this is a good example, and then the question type in action. So presumably, like you say, you would add bits in initially, features, and slowly add to those and build and build and build. And would you say that the features you add in, do they always go somewhere? Do they always? The quality is a key part of it, but would you add something in that isn't going to go anywhere, or would it?
No, in Scrum it's all about the time is precious, and we do the highest value item to have a piece of potentially shippable product at the end of it.
And again, going back to how the sprints are managed with the 2 weeks, it's very rare that someone would decide, we do want this, we'd start progressing, and then that would change so quickly over that period of 2 weeks. And as from experience, that that's happened once in the 7 years I've worked here. So.
So how do we measure progress then? What's
the main one is we use the sprint burn down, as you can see on screen there. This is made for the team to be able to sort of analyse how well the sprint's going. Bringing work in from in sprint planning, it's it's still an estimate. So the guys still need to monitor, you know, the progress. They could be working in an area of the code that's unfamiliar. So, you know, without knowing, they can't really give an honest opinion of how long a piece of development might take. So we use the sprint burn down to, you know, to monitor that, and we can then work, if, as you can see there, going sort of in the middle of the chart, that you know, it's going above the ideal line. So that's when the team would ideally come together with the product owner and the Scrum Master, and sort of saying, you know, we might be off track here, we might need to take something out, or you know, there's many reasons behind why that shows like that, but it's a good indicator of how the teams are progressing.
So you have data effectively tracking the progress on, so it's not a question of go away for 2 weeks, come back with what you've got.
Oh no.
Yeah, there is things that you're able to report and show the progress of it.
Yes, and the beauty of the daily stand-up is that we've got the product owner, the team, myself, anybody as a stakeholder can come and observe that as well. So we're extremely transparent, we don't hide anything.
Yeah.
Anybody can come and see how we're progressing at any time.
Okay, that's good to know, that's good to know. So, quality.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest questions, because we're dealing with high-stakes summative examinations.
Yes.
You know, it's important that it works on every single level. When the candidate takes the examination, that's going to be, it's almost the technology side of things is going to be beyond, not even part of the scene. It's about their ability to show their response to the questions to meet that qualification. How do we ensure quality as part of it?
So one of the things we do is we have a definition of done, and everyone must understand what is meant by done. So that's what we can say a product or a piece of work is achieved to be able to be shipped to a customer. So there's things like, for example, the developer will work on it, another developer will do a code review, it will be peer tested before it goes to the tester will then run it. As Kurt mentioned earlier, we have automation tests that run every single night so that we can check that the work has not had a negative impact on any of the tests that are already there. So we're constantly inspecting the work, ensuring that the quality is there before it gets anywhere near the customer.
And the main key to it is it comes from the development team themselves. So they're the driver of this. They're the ones who are saying, you know, we want to do our best. So we are going to put this checklist in, this definition of done, to ensure that when we say it's done, this has been done, this has been done, and this has been done. And that's, you know, that's pushing the quality from the team onwards.
Okay. So I've had a question here from James. In terms of is this a new thing for some customers? Do they find it difficult to kind of get their heads around this kind of structure? You know, are there any kind of difficulties in that kind of early stage of using Scrum for new customers?
It's not a new framework, as I said at the start. It's been around since the 1990s, and more businesses and organisations with development are using Scrum. We are constantly in contact with our client. They don't have to wait 6 months to see something, so it's often seen as a great positive. And if there are any changes, they've only got 2 weeks to wait rather than say 6 months.
Yeah.
And they're constantly in that feedback loop.
And I think it's key certainly from a business and even a Scrum Master point of view to you know, educate customers that are new to the process and you know, highlight the you know, the key points to it and the benefits to it. Yes, some customers haven't experienced it, but the more we work with them, you know, they see the value. Definitely see the value. And
has it been, you know, largely welcomely received? Has it, you know, been positively received by the customers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the key to it is getting something so early to see it. You know, we all as humans, we all like to see something. Yeah. And you know, rather than, you know, waterfall start waiting, you know, months, you know, years to actually get something that might not be relevant, as you mentioned before, or even right, actually getting something, you know, so quickly and seeing it, you know, everyone, that's a benefit.
Because it's a rapidly changing market, isn't it? You know, when a regulation changes, you know, that could be something that's coming, a new security protocols comes in, your competitor makes a big step that you weren't expecting. You need to be responsive to this, don't you? You need to have something there and there.
So we're not necessarily planning 6 months ahead, we are being super responsive to things as and when they come in. And as we plan, and every single 2 weeks, you know, we have refinement sessions. If a PO gets a request, we can grab a team, get them in a room. What's the size of this? We'll go back to the customer. You can have this on X date.
And the framework's set up to to help that. So, you know, customers' priority could change for the reasons you've mentioned. All that would do would change the priority of the backlog, where the team would then come in and pick the highest priority.
Okay.
It's just their setup to do.
Are there some items that remain on the backlog for a long time, forever?
Yes, because the product owner is constantly putting the highest value item as discussed with the clients. The client's getting what they want as quickly as possible, and sometimes it can turn out when they actually see the end product that what something they mentioned a while ago isn't actually required anymore.
Yeah. So it's a very dynamic kind of shopping list, isn't it?
Yeah, it's constantly evolving.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So in terms of kind of further help then, in terms of people looking for further guidance and information, do you want some resources here you've highlighted, I think?
Yes, so you can have a look at the Scrum Alliance or scrum.org, which are two of the awarding bodies for the sort of qualifications that Kirk and myself have. Mountain Goat Software is a really good one. It's another one of the founding fathers of Scrum who runs that. There's a lot of forums on these websites that you can ask questions, there's documents. But if anyone new to it, I'd recommend reading the Scrum Guide, which you can get from scrum.org. I think it comes in like 30 different languages to learn about it in the basics. But Kirk and I are always here, so if there were any questions, you know, we're open to those. If any clients ever want to speak to us, that's fine.
Okay, and I think that's a general kind of point from BTL really. For some organisations, this is quite a new step to them. Some that may be doing it already and wondering how they can move across to working as part of the Surpass community. I think one thing to mention about Surpass community is it is a group of organisations, assessment delivery organisations, test publishers, etc., who are all striving towards the big goal of engaging more use of technology within the assessment process. I think everyone recognises that technology is playing a stronger role, and you saw at the start of it, we have a conference coming up in October, which where we bring all our community together over and above the webinars that we do with them. And what's amazing is the collaboration that goes on there, and people discussing the roadmap, pulling apart the ideas, pulling apart the concepts, restructuring them, and just so we've got a stronger roadmap really, isn't it? So excellent. Well, I want to say thank you very much to Kirk and Lauren today. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. If you do have any questions, please drop me a line. I think you should all have my email address. It's tim.burnett@btl.com. And if you would like to take part in future webinars, then please let me know. We'd love to hear from you. But thank you very much for today. Goodbye.
Thank you.